All right, folks, if you want to hear my story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and smash the bell icon. So, let's kick things off. Welcome to today's story. Welcome to a world of terror, where whispers hide in the wind and shadows talk more than living people do. Follow Haunted Podcast and enjoy a brand new detailed presentation of heart-stopping horror stories. This isn't just a work of fiction, it's a witness to the silences buried in the pages of history. In the northern part of the United States, nestled deep in the Green Mountains of Vermont, lies an ancient town called Blackwood Ridge. It's on the map, sure, but locals often avoid talking about it after dark. Blackwood Ridge is undeniably beautiful. The buildings are made of old-world stone covered in moss. The white walls, which must have once sparkled, are now yellowed by the beatings of time. The streets here are so narrow that if two people walk face to face, they have to press themselves against the walls to let each other pass. Right in the center of town stands a massive church. Its bell rings every hour, but there's no holiness in its sound, only a strange heaviness, like it's issuing a warning. During the day, Blackwood Ridge looks like a postcard. When sunlight hits the mountains and falls on the town, it's like a painting coming to life. Tourists come, take photos, drink coffee, and leave. But as soon as the sun sets, when the sky turns purple and the last ray of light hides behind the mountain, the real face of Blackwood Ridge emerges. Once night falls, a strange coldness seeps into the air, a chill that goes straight into your bones. This isn't weather-related, it's something else. This story belongs to 24-year-old Jake Sullivan, who had recently come from Boston to Blackwood Ridge. Jake was an architecture student. He had a passion for studying and documenting the buildings, structures, and history of old European-style towns. His university had sent him to Vermont for a research project where he had to work on the architecture of lesser-known towns. Blackwood Ridge was part of his research because the church and the 100-year-old houses here were unique examples of architecture. When Jake first arrived, he was mesmerized by its beauty. He wrote in his journal, "This place feels frozen in time." He booked a room in an old guest house on the edge of town called the Ravenwood Inn. It was like an old mansion. The wooden stairs creaked when you walked on them. The caretaker was an old man named Silas. Silas was over 70, with a hunched back and deep wrinkles on his face like someone had carved them with a knife. Silas spoke very little. Whenever Jake asked him something, he'd give a brief answer and walk away quickly as if he was afraid of something. Blackwood Ridge was a beautiful town, but there was a terrifying silence there. Jake noticed on his very first day that after sunset, people's behavior changed. Shopkeepers started pulling down their shutters and people hurried home. The streets went silent. No one was seen wandering outside after dark. No dogs barked, no birds chirped. Only the sound of the church bell remained, making the silence even deeper. Jake thought it was just a local custom. He figured people here just slept early. But on the third night, while he was sitting in his room sketching, he felt something was off. He looked out the window. The street was completely deserted. Dust particles were dancing in the streetlight, but there was no sign of humans. Then his eyes caught the corner of the alley across the way. A shadow was standing there. Jake looked closely. It was someone, but they weren't moving, just standing there. Jake rubbed his eyes and looked again. In the next instant, the shadow vanished as if it was never there. Jake blamed it on fatigue and went to sleep, but that night he repeatedly felt like someone was breathing outside his room. On the fourth day, Jake decided to investigate the old church and the cemetery nearby in detail. It was necessary for his research. Around noon, when the sun was high, he headed toward the church. It was very old. The walls had stone carvings of angels and demons. Right behind the church was the ancient cemetery. The cemetery walls were high and usually locked with a rusted iron gate, but during the day it remained open. Jake walked inside the cemetery. There were hundreds of old graves. Some had crosses, some had stone statues. The air smelled of dry leaves and wet soil. Jake was taking notes in his notebook when his eyes landed on a spot in the far corner of the graveyard. There was a place different from the other graves. A broken wedding arch stood there. Jake was shocked. A wedding mandap in a cemetery? That was unusual. He slowly walked toward the arch. It was made of wood, once painted white, but now blackened. Dried flowers hung from it, looking years old. They were so dry they would crumble to dust if touched. The soil beneath the archgate was slightly darker than the rest of the ground, as if something had been buried there repeatedly, or something had stained the ground. Jake tried to read the small stone plate standing near the arch, but the letters were faded. Only a date was vaguely visible, 1889. Jake didn't pay much attention to it. He figured it was some old story or a memorial for a wealthy family. He took some photos and returned to his guest house. But after that day, a strange series of events began for him. He didn't know that by returning from that cemetery, he had unknowingly invited something that would never let him leave. That same night, while Jake was working in his room, the weather outside suddenly changed. It had been sunny all day, but now clouds gathered in the sky. The room was silent, except for the sound of Jake's pencil. Then, around 11 p.m., he heard faint footsteps outside. The sound wasn't normal. It was like someone walking barefoot, but there was also a slight rustling sound of fabric. Ching, 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 like someone wearing heavy jewelry. Jake stopped. He listened closely. The sound stopped right below his window. His heart started beating fast. He gathered courage and looked out the window. The street was empty. No one was there in the streetlight. But as soon as he looked up, a white silhouette stood at the corner of the alley. It looked like a woman. She was wearing a long white gown, which wasn't moving in the wind, but was stationary. Jake thought maybe it was a tourist who got lost. He was about to open the window when suddenly the woman vanished. She didn't run, didn't turn, she just dissolved into the air.
He immediately closed the window and pulled the curtains. He told himself it was his imagination. He was hallucinating due to fatigue. He tried to sleep, but sleep was miles away from his eyes. The next night, the same sound came again, this time a bit closer. The sound came straight to his door. Jake got up from bed. His hands were shaking. He slowly opened the window. Even in the summer season, an extremely cold wind entered the room, making Jake's hair stand on end. He felt like someone had just walked past his guest house. He turned on his flashlight and shone it on the stone road below. There were marks, like someone had walked there with wet mud, leaving footprints. And the scariest part was that those footprints were leading straight towards the old cemetery, where the broken wedding arch was. Jake couldn't hold back. A mix of curiosity and fear made him restless. Following the footprints, he reached the cemetery. The church bell rang. It was 2 a.m. There was no one else around except Jake. The moon was hidden behind clouds, making the cemetery even darker. Jake pushed the iron gate of the cemetery and went inside. The creaking of the gate sounded like a gunshot in that silence. The air inside was even colder, so cold that Jake's breath started freezing. Walking past old crosses and gravestones, Jake reached the broken wedding arch, the same arch he had seen the day before. That's when Jake saw her for the first time. A woman was standing under the arch. She was wearing a white wedding gown that looked quite old. The edges of the gown were burnt and there were mud stains on it. Her face was covered with a white veil. It seemed like she was waiting for someone. She held a dried bouquet in her hand. Jake's feet wouldn't move from the ground. He knew he should run, but an invisible force held him there. He took a step forward. There was a sound of dry leaves on the ground. And suddenly, the strong wind seemed to stop. The silence inside the cemetery became so deep that Jake could even hear his own heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. The sound echoed in his ears. The woman slowly turned towards Jake. The bones in her neck made a cracking sound, like dry wood breaking. Her veil blew slightly in the wind, and the face that Jake saw made his senses fly away. The color of the woman's face was pure white, like lime was plastered on it. There was no flexibility in her skin. Her eyes were so terrifying it seemed like a spirit possessed her. There were no pupils in the eyes, just white fog. And there were blood stains on the face that seemed dried. It looked like years ago, the woman had cried tears of blood, and they had frozen on her cheeks. Jake noticed that the woman's feet weren't touching the ground. She was floating a few inches in the air. Darkness peeked from under her gown. Jake's whole body went cold, and he felt frozen. A scream was about to come out of his mouth, but the voice got stuck in his throat. But before anything happened, the woman dissolved into the air and suddenly vanished. Only the smell of dried flowers remained.
Somehow, Jake ran back to his guest house. He didn't sleep all night. He sat on the bed, holding a cross in his hand, watching the door repeatedly. As soon as morning came and the old caretaker Silas arrived, Jake stopped him. Jake's eyes were red and his face had turned pale. He asked Silas about the woman. Silas didn't say anything at first. He continued sweeping as if he hadn't heard anything. But when Jake mentioned the wedding arch in the cemetery and told him he saw a woman there, the broom fell from Silas's hand. The old caretaker's face turned white. Fear was clearly visible in his eyes. Silas called Jake inside and closed the door. In a trembling voice, he started telling the story. "Son, you have stepped onto that cursed place." Silas explained that this story starts from 1889. That year, a wedding was supposed to happen in Blackwood Ridge. The bride's name was Elizabeth Harrow and the groom was William Gray. They were known as the happiest couple in town. Their love story was famous throughout the town. The mandap was set up near the cemetery because renovation work was going on in the church at that time and there wasn't enough space for the crowd. People say getting married near a cemetery is considered auspicious because it symbolizes the union of life and death. On the wedding night, everyone gathered. The whole town was decorated. Elizabeth reached the mandap in her wedding gown. She wore the most beautiful white gown. There was happiness on her face, but her groom never showed up. Hours passed. The night grew deeper. The guests waited, but there was no sign of William. Later, it was found that William had left Blackwood Ridge a few hours before the wedding and ran away with another girl. He left Elizabeth there without any message, without any goodbye. Elizabeth waited for him under that mandap all night. She didn't move, didn't cry, just stood there. The night grew colder. With the first ray of morning when people reached there, Elizabeth had fallen on the ground. Her heart had stopped. Some say she suffered a huge shock which caused her death, while others say she cursed herself. Elizabeth's body was buried in that same cemetery, under that same arch. But after that night, strange things started happening in Blackwood Ridge. Sometimes at night, people see a woman in a white wedding gown standing under the arch gate of that cemetery, as if she is still waiting for someone. People call her the dead bride or the cursed bride. It is said that she calls every person who goes there at night because she thinks maybe he is her groom. Listening to Silas's words, Jake was terrified. He had seen that dead bride last night. Silas requested Jake to leave this town, but Jake was a scientific thinker. He didn't fully believe in these stories, although he couldn't deny what he had seen. That night when Jake was in his room, he heard the same sound again. This time the footsteps came straight outside his room, and then a strange smell came in the air, the rotten smell of wet mud and old flowers. The smell was so strong that Jake felt like vomiting. Jake started getting scared. He looked slowly towards the door. A shadow was visible under the door, like someone was standing right in front of the door. Then the handle of his room door started moving on its own slowly. Click, 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 as if someone was trying to open the door from outside. Sweat poured out of Jake due to panic. He picked up a chair kept in the room and placed it in front of the door. Then the handle stopped moving. Silence spread.
The
Jake
room
felt maybe
door
it was gone.
opened on its own. The chair fell on the floor. Jake screamed, but there was no one at the door. The alley was empty. After a few seconds, the sound of footsteps went away again. But then, Jake's eyes went to his room window. Outside the window, on the second floor, that same terrifying-looking woman was floating in the air, in the same white wedding gown, staring at Jake with her terrifying eyes. No sound came from her mouth, but a voice echoed in Jake's mind. "You came? You finally came." And then suddenly, she vanished. Jake didn't sleep all night again. As soon as morning came, he went and told everything to the church priest. The priest's name was Father Thomas. He was a serious and experienced man. When Jake told the whole story, lines of worry deepened on Father Thomas's face. The priest said that until now, no one had seen the dead bride do this. Usually, she only appears in the cemetery, but if she has come to someone's house, it means the danger is very deep. The priest asked if Jake brought anything from the cemetery when he went there the first time. Then Jake remembered that he had brought some dried flowers from there. He thought they would be useful for research. He had kept those flowers between his diary pages. The priest said, "This is the mistake. Maybe this is why the spirit came to your house. There is a part of her soul in those flowers, and maybe that spirit feels that her groom has come back to take her. You have become a substitute for the groom for her." The priest told Jake that he should leave this town immediately, otherwise that woman might never leave him alone. He gave Jake some holy water and told him to sprinkle it in his room. But the most important thing was that he must cross the town limits before nightfall. Hearing this, Jake's heart shuddered. He decided he would leave Blackwood Ridge today itself. He wanted to save his life. Jake started packing his stuff quickly, but when he went back to his house to pack, he saw wet mud marks on the doorstep, exactly like the ones near the cemetery. These marks were coming straight inside his room. Jake started getting scared now. He knew he was not alone. He quickly started packing. His hands were shaking. He couldn't even put things in the bag properly. Then he looked out the window and saw the sky color changing and turning black. It was 4 p.m., but it looked like night. Black clouds were descending from the mountains toward the town. Suddenly, the house lights started flickering, bulbs started blowing out, and suddenly the house went dark. Heavy rain started outside and lightning began to strike. The thunder was so loud that the whole building started shaking. Jake turned on his flashlight and picked up his bag. He was about to move toward the door when suddenly lightning struck again. In that light, in the corner of the room, that woman appeared in front of Jake. This time, she was closer. Her face looked even more distorted now. Black blood was dripping from her mouth. Seeing her, Jake shouted loudly. He threw the flashlight at her, but the flashlight stopped in mid-air and fell on the floor. The old caretaker Silas had just arrived there. He had heard Jake scream. He looked inside the window standing outside. Silas saw Jake screaming in panic, and a terrifying woman in white gown was standing in front of him. Silas took out a cross and started reading some prayers. He ran inside the house. Climbing the stairs, he reached Jake's room. He tried to break the door. "Jake, open the door," he shouted. But by then, it was too late. Silence spread from inside the room. When Silas broke the door and looked inside, Jake wasn't there. The room was empty. The window was open, and a strong storm was blowing outside. Jake's bag was lying on the bed, but Jake was missing. There was only the smell of wet mud and dried flowers in the room. The whole town searched. Police came, locals went out, but there was no trace of Jake. 2 days later, in the morning, when the rain stopped, some children saw something near the cemetery. They ran home and told the elders. When people reached the cemetery, they saw that fresh soil was dug up under that old wedding arch where Elizabeth's grave was. A few hours later, Jake's dead body was found. He was buried in wet mud inside that same cemetery, under that same wedding arch. He was wearing the same clothes he wore last, but mud and dried flowers were scattered on his clothes. The strangest thing was that there was no fear on Jake's face, but a strange peace, and an old ring was stuck on his finger, which was believed to be Elizabeth's. Doctors declared the cause of death a heart attack, but the locals knew the truth. After that day, everyone accepted that the dead bride's spirit took Jake as her groom and took him with her forever. Jake would now never let her wait end. People of Blackwood Ridge say that even today, at night, when the wind blows, the sound of two people walking comes from the cemetery, the rustling of a woman's gown, and the sound of a man's footsteps who have become one forever. Blackwood Ridge is still just as beautiful. Tourists come, take photos, but those who are wise do not look toward the cemetery after sunset. Jake's story has become a warning. Sometimes, curiosity takes humans not to knowledge, but into the mouth of death. Old stories are not just stories, they are warnings. Friends, how did you like this story of the cursed bride of Blackwood Ridge? Have you ever felt like someone is watching you when no one is there? If you liked this story, if it gave you goosebumps, then quickly subscribe to our channel, Midnight Chills. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can hear such heart-stopping horror stories first every week. Tell us in the comments what kind of horror story you want to hear next week. Are you ready for the next terrifying journey? Meet you in the next story. Until then, stay safe and don't go alone in the dark. Be sure to tell us how you liked this story in the comment box, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So, meet you in the next story. Until then, stay safe and God bless.